hey everybody, it's your boy, in a fair few esoteric circles of the right, or even in some more black-pilled ones, and of course you'll get this on the left too, that goes without saying, there's a lot of talk about needing a great man, or rather a dictator, a Caesar, if you will, because it's always him who's used as the primary example of the kind of man that we need in order to correct the issues of the day, to destroy global homo, to bring back tradition, because we can't use the current system of liberal democracy, we can't use the levers of power as they currently are because they are so paused, so controlled by the powers that be. We must somehow appoint a dictator in order to sort the issues out, and Caesar will be the inspiration, the primary model that this dictator would be based upon. But the thing is, we don't need a dictator in order to get what we want. All we need are men of action, or rather men doing the right actions. Why do these people feel they need a dictator to fix the issues that we currently see? We all know what they are: the rampant cultural Marxism, the degeneracy, things like that. Why do they feel that they need a dictator? Well, democracy has failed, according to these people, and they've read their Hopper, so they know that it doesn't actually bring about the most ideal amount of freedom. They think that actually it perpetuates a lot of the issues that we currently have and will only make things worse because it appeals to the lowest common denominator and it is essentially mob rule. They also feel that the current crop of politicians running the world aren't up to snuff. There aren't any real statesmen anymore. They're just blank slate politicians at best and just terrible cultural Marxists at worst. Even the so-called conservatives throughout the West are not actual conservatives. None of them really stand out as being that person who has that aura of leadership, that vision that will bring about the best times for their countries or for the civilization in general. And it seems to be really almost by committee. They have these groups of advisors that think that they must appeal to these certain demographics, this voting bloc, in order to gain electoral success, and it's not really helping any country out whatsoever. A dictator, in their opinion, will probably just cut out all of this nonsense entirely and make decisions based entirely on what they want ideologically or pragmatically at any given moment. But they also feel it's almost inevitable that it has to happen at this point because this current system has failed and at some point it needs to take place. I don't know how exactly they're going to install a dictator. Are they going to use the system against it? But they don't agree with the system. They think it's flawed and terrible and doesn't work. Are they going to have a violent revolution? Well, how are they going to get the weapons and the organisation needed to do that? I hear a lot of talk about revolution. I hear a lot of talk about revolt. But I don't see any plans towards how that could be achieved. I don't think a lot of these people have the balls to do that anyway. But who's to say that their dictator will actually do what they want them to do? How do they know that he doesn't have his own vision of what should be, about what should be done? It might not be that he, in the end, due to the environment that the guy finds himself in, that he'll do any of the things that they think he will do. Who's to say the guy has the power and the means at his disposal to even defeat global homo? Because these people also have a lot of power and a lot of resources behind them. And also, will this person have the charisma, the political capital in order to convince the people that he should run? Because these people with their elite theory, although it has a lot of good stuff to talk about, aristocracies and things like that, ultimately a little bit of populism is needed because without consent, you can't rule. Why is it that Caesar is the one that they always are drawn to when it comes to having the ideal dictator? I don't understand that. But what did Julius Caesar actually do when he was dictator? Well, he fixed the calendar, and that's about it. The reason why he became dictator for life, Julius Caesar became dictator for life because he couldn't trust anybody around him. They were either too incompetent or out to kill him. And really the primary goal of being dictator for life for him was to become Alexander, to go out and conquer the East, to succeed where he didn't, because he felt that he didn't really have a lot of time because he was getting on a bit and his health was declining. That is really the reason why he became dictator for life, to control those he could already control and then go out and conquer the East and then die of old age. That's essentially what he wanted to do. As regards to reform in the Republic, he didn't do anything. He couldn't think of anything. He'd given up. He had no ideas about how to fix the mess. All he really wanted to do was to keep it ticking. He didn't really change anything, really. And if you look at his actions prior to his death, before he set out to go to war with Parthia, he actually was including a lot of the people that he had fought against in the Civil War back into the Senate alongside his own people. Obviously, his own people would always take precedence because security reasons, but his whole policy was not, let's purge all the optimates and fix the Republic. It was, no, we've had this civil war, I've won, I will now enact clemencia or clemency. He wanted actually to rebuild the Republic to the way it was beforehand and nothing else. He didn't want to do what Augustus would later do and transform it into something completely different. He didn't do that at all. He never did anything. In fact, he did the opposite. He did what a rhino would do. He did what Boris Johnson did. Boris Johnson, as soon as he became Conservative Party leader and then obviously Prime Minister, there was in the party a sort of rift. There was a split, a minor one, ultimately in hindsight, where a lot of the more wet Remainer types left. Then he brought in some more Brexiteer types. Others moved to the Cook Party, which is no longer around, or decided to go to the Lib Dems. But then, slowly but surely, after things settled and they realised the guy was nowhere near the Donald Trump that the hype led them to believe he was, then he started bringing back these wets until eventually his entire cabinet was them. All the Brexiteers, the true ones, left by that point. They became nothing more than backbenchers who just moaned at the sides. That's essentially what Julius Caesar was doing, although he was much more cleverer than Boris Johnson and didn't allow them to have too much influence. Ultimately, his policies led to his death. So why these people think that Julius Caesar is the model for a dictator, I don't even know. It doesn't even make sense. They've not even read one book on the history of the Roman Republic, clearly, because otherwise they'd realise it's not Julius Caesar they're looking for, it's Octavian or Augustus. They need the other Caesar. But again, they've clearly not read up on their Roman history, otherwise they would know this and wouldn't just spout, we need a Caesar. Octavian was the one who, after another civil war, eventually came up with an idea, a vision that was totally revolutionary, which fundamentally changed Rome forever. It was him who created the Principate, which we now know as the Empire. And that was the veneer of a republic when really it was a monarchy. But the thing is, we don't have an Octavian at the moment. We don't even have a Caesar. And really, if a dictator were to pop up, at best it would be a Sulla. This Sulla would come in, he wouldn't kill anybody because when we don't live in ancient Rome. He would probably purge some of the deep state. He'd get rid of the people that he didn't like. But then he wouldn't actually do anything to make sure these people would never come back again. Because Sulla did try that, but ultimately his successors changed a lot of the laws because they thought what he did was too brutal and nearly ruined the Republic. But this is what this Sulla would do, this modern Sulla. He would purge the deep state, wait until everything is fine, then, just like Sulla, he would leave, he would retire. Kind of like what Pinochet did in Chile, and then slowly but surely, all these other global homo leftist elements would creep their way back in again, and before you know it, we're back to square one. All you need is to elect, whether that is in America or in this country, politicians on our side who are willing to do something and do the right thing. Someone like a DeSantis. DeSantis is one of the rare breed of right-wing politicians that does stuff. Like, he doesn't just say, oh, I'll do this, and then does something completely different, or run on an election campaign like Nixon did, which kind of hypes up his right-wing credentials, but then goes the complete opposite direction. He does what he says he's going to do. And that's what we need. And if we elect loads of different DeSantis types all over the West, we wouldn't even hear talk of a dictator. You don't hear of a talk of a dictator or secession in Florida necessarily. You might hear it in a few isolated libertarian circles, but by and large, you don't, because he'd get stuff done. You don't hear about this type of stuff happening in Eastern Europe for the most part, because they're not one big monolith, but by and large, you don't hear about stuff like this, because they have politicians that get stuff done, who don't do what Western conservative politicians do. Orban, warts and all, because I have my issues with him as much as other people would have issues with him from the opposite side, he at the very least does what he says he's going to do. He's going to protect Hungarian tradition and culture, and even though economically he's terrible, he gets it done, doesn't he? The party that currently runs Poland, again, same thing. Poland first. They do it. That's what you need, really. Politicians that will do stuff, and then all of this will go. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.